Hi YouTube, I'm Dr. Langley. I work here in beautiful Colorado Springs at Pine Ridge Family Medicine, and today I wanted to talk with you about hives. The fancy medical term for hives is urticaria, or it's just hives, rash, wheals with a EA instead of an EE. Those are all words for the same basic process. So I remember back in college, I just graduated from college, and I was in Missouri for the summer, a place that I hadn't spent much time before, and I was getting bug bites all over the place. And I also happened to be using a new lotion that I'd found. It smelled good, so I thought I'd give it a try. But I started getting hives. Little bumps. Usually they look pink if you've got pale enough skin to show them. I've got pretty pale skin. Darker skin, you won't see the pinkness, but they'll definitely be bumps. Sometimes they can be little round, discrete, separate from each other, little bumps. Sometimes they can all kind of conglomerate together, so you end up with these huge, like they look like a map across your skin of itchy spots. And I started getting those, and I was so distressed. I didn't know what to do. It was so itchy and scratchy. And I eventually got rid of the lotion and replaced it with something that had worked for me in the past without causing me hives. And I did more efforts to avoid getting bitten by mosquitoes all the time. And eventually, over the course of weeks, the hives went away. But in the meantime, I was miserable, just itching all over all the time. Lots of lotion, I think I put hydrocortisone steroids on it too. Oh, it was bad. And of course, I didn't go see a doctor because I was going to be a doctor, and doctors don't see doctors or something. But now I've learned better, and I recommend you see your doctor because it's miserable to just tough it out. But in the meantime, let me see if I can give you some tips about what might be going on. So there's a gazillion reasons that you could have hives. You can see my brief summary there. You can have them for less than 6 weeks, which is what I ended up having, even though it felt like longer. Or you can actually have chronic urticaria, which is more than 6 weeks of hives. Oh, and they do tend to kind of come and go and get better and then worse again. And we don't have a great understanding for what causes it. It seems like there's histamine in the skin that triggers it. And it seems like it's usually an overreaction of your body to something. So sometimes it's just spontaneous. For no good reason, you have hives and horrible itchiness. Sometimes people are unlucky enough to have it whenever they exercise or whenever they get exposed to water or whenever they go out in the hot or the cold or when they're exposed to sunlight or a lot of vibration like on an airplane or a helicopter, things like that. Those tend to be the more rare causes of urticaria. But they do happen, and I've definitely treated patients with them, and it is miserable to try to figure out exactly what's making them worse because sometimes it can take a couple hours for them to get worse after that exposure, and sometimes it's right away. The more common causes of urticaria are things like medications. I'm sure you've heard of people who are allergic to penicillin. It seems to be that that's becoming recognized as just a normal reaction to get hives sometimes with penicillins or anything in that beta-lactam group of antibiotics. So it's not something that's going to progress to an anaphylactic reaction one day, but it certainly is obnoxious to have those hives. So if you can avoid having those when you know you have that reaction, that's nice. But if you really needed that antibiotic, your doctor would probably give it to you anyway. And also a surprising source of urticaria sometimes is nonsteroidal anti-inflammatory drugs or NSAIDs. So that's things like ibuprofen and aspirin and naproxen, that family of medications. That's actually a pretty common cause of urticaria. So that's one thing to first stop taking that and see if things get any better. Sometimes hives come up with infections. It could be viral, it could be bacterial, it could even be a parasite. All of those have been known to trigger hives. It could be an insect sting. That's a pretty common one too. So it kind of feels like you got bitten by a mosquito all over the place because they're just so itchy. But it was triggered by just a couple insect stings, and that's what happened to me in college. It's my opinion, and it seems to be recognized in the literature somewhat, that a lot of these is kind of, there's a threshold to where your body tends to react with hives, and you kind of heap insult upon insult to get to that threshold. And some people have a lower threshold, so they only just need to be stung by a couple mosquitoes, and then they break out in hives everywhere. But like for me, I was in a new place, exposed to new pollens, which kind of set off allergies a little bit, but not so much that I noticed or took medications for it, but just a little bit. And then I also had a couple insect stings that I wasn't used to getting all the time because I had been living in Colorado prior to that. Not many mosquitoes. And then I also had a new lotion that my body didn't like. So that combination put me into hives. So as I reduced those exposures, the histamine level in my skin went down, and so I was able to recover from the urticaria. And that's what I've seen in patients too. Usually it's not just one thing that sent them over the edge into having these hives. It was a buildup of all of them. So just like I was just talking about, allergies are also a big component. Allergies and eczema and asthma all seem to be related. This is kind of an allergic process, your body overreacting to something that's not actually going to hurt it. So all these things that could cause it. And if you're really just having just these skin itching and bumps, then you can probably treat these at home. If you're having other systemic signs, so things like fevers, losing weight, not feeling well overall, that would definitely be a reason to go to your doctor sooner rather than later. But if you just have these hives and you want to do something right away, what should you do? So since they're caused by histamine, you want to decrease the histamine in your body with antihistamines. So that originally came from the class of Benadryl. So they developed Benadryl as the first antihistamine, works really well, also makes you sleepy. So they made second generation of antihistamines. That's your Claritin, Zyrtec, cetirizine, fexofenadine, Allegra, that family of medications. They're supposed to be less sedating, but still get rid of that histamine. So first start on those and start taking those, load up on those, make sure that you're on a good amount of those. And sometimes people have to even go to the next step of histamine blockers, which are the H2 blockers. So that's a class of medications that is classically used for treating heartburn. So this is your Zantac, your ranitidine, your famotidine, your Pepcid AC. Those are common brand names for them. So even though it seems a little bit weird to be taking an antacid for a skin condition, it actually works pretty well. And you're kind of building that H1 blocker and that H2 blocker to really get rid of your histamine. Because just one sometimes doesn't do it. Sometimes your levels of histamine are so high, these medications don't take care of it. So talk with your doctor about which combination of antihistamines might be good for you. Play around with which ones make you sleepy and which ones don't. So sometimes, especially if that itchiness is keeping you up at night, it's nice to take a Benadryl, which makes you sleepy and knocks you out and helps you ignore that itch. But during the day, you might have to use a cetirizine, a fexofenadine, a loratadine, something that's not supposed to make you so sleepy to get rid of the itchiness. Sometimes people put on topical steroids. I know I did. It doesn't have great evidence for helping. Same with oral steroids. They don't seem to have great evidence for really making the biggest difference. But soothing your skin, applying lotion, especially trying to avoid scratching your skin and causing bleeding or weakening of your skin is really the goal. I mean, not only comfort, but it's also a health thing to keep your skin as intact as possible. So hopefully that gives you an idea of what to do for these awful hives, and hopefully they go away and never come back. If you're interested in watching other videos about allergic processes, I've got some more there. But please, in the meantime, subscribe to our page so that you can find out when we have new videos. Thanks for watching.